Yep.
There we go.
Good evening. Welcome to live stream with Smart Trucking. How are you guys all doing tonight? Shannon, Casper, Wyoming. Beautiful spot. Oh, somebody from Florida, Medina? I can't read it quickly enough. Scott, Temple, Texas. How are you guys all doing tonight? Jim Trucker, how are you? Oh, you know, all these people, all you guys from all over the map. I find that fascinating that all parts of the country are represented. I've been to pretty much all these spots. They're all beautiful. I miss going out there. I do. So, somebody else in Casper, Wyoming, San Antonio, Texas. How are you guys all doing tonight? Albany, Oregon. Oh, it'll be beautiful out there right now. Larry Park, Gary, Indiana. Well, lots of activity, not so beautiful in Gary, Indiana, but nice. I like the new Petro truck stop, I gotta say. I like it.
Jamaica.
Jamaica? Oh man, I bet you it's warm down there right now. Unless it's Jamaica, New York, but probably not. Buxton, Maine. It is. Noel Austin checking in from Jamaica.
Oklahoma.
Amazing. Shannon, Casper is beautiful. We gotta talk. I think it's pretty out there. Larry Park, good to see you, man. We're doing well, thank you. Miami, Florida. I bet you it's a little bit warm down there in Miami. Superior, Wisconsin,
Jamaica,
Duluth,
West
Minnesota.
Indies.
No kidding. It's incredible, the internet, you know, when you think of the contact from all over the place. It never ceases to amaze me. Atlanta, Georgia, Springfield, Missouri. Who's in Springfield? Alex Amador, Springfield, Missouri. Home of a couple of big carriers.
Okay, just another minute or two.
Okay.
Get started.
Georgia, it's always hot in here. Yeah, George, it is. It's always humid, or at least every time I've been there it is anyway. Pembroke, Virginia. Wisconsin. A lot of trucking out of Wisconsin. A lot of nice trucks out of Wisconsin. That's from Big Man 7917. So what's new in the trucking world out there today? Throw me some questions, we'll talk about it. I'll give you some answers to the best of my ability. I just run local now, and there's times I do miss the highway. It's nice to be home at night. I got to say that. I like that part, and I like 8-hour days, but every once in a while I do miss the highway.
Have you ever rolled through northern Wisconsin on Highway 2, headed on the upper peninsula of Michigan?
I certainly have, and there's a beautiful piece of road. In fact, we used to cut west across there years ago. We'd cross at the Sioux, run Highway 2 past all the sand dunes and the lake and everything like that, and then head out through North Dakota and that way to go out west. And that's a beautiful piece of road. I haven't been there in a long time. I don't know if they've ever 4-laned it or not, but yeah, beautiful piece of road. Used to go there, across there all the time in the 80s.
I ran out my 14-hour clock at the receiver and they won't let me stay here. What do I do?
Huh. It's just incredible. I would just go to the nearest safe truck stop, run a paper log if you've got one to do that, and I would just go take care of yourself first. Go find yourself a nice, safe place with food and washrooms and stuff like that. Go to the nicest, closest truck stop, and to heck with the rules. You're justified in taking care of yourself, always.
Have you ever wanted to do ice road trucking?
You know, I did one trip one time years ago with a friend of mine, and I'd have to say no. I'm not much for the cold anyway, but I didn't particularly care for it. I didn't really feel safe on the ice. It was interesting to do. I was glad I did it, but it wouldn't be for me. That type of trucking isn't for me either. That's I don't know. That's extreme bush trucking, and it's interesting, but long term. And you know, back then the money was pretty good. I don't know how the money is now, but it'll be like everything else. It won't be the money that it used to be. So no, not attracted to ice road trucking.
What is your best advice for a new CDL holder?
My best advice is to find something local that pays by the hour. And I know that's, you know, not very exciting and adventurous, and it's not over the road, but it'll be a more secure job these days. It'll pay better these days. You'll be at home at night instead of being stuck in a truck stop somewhere. And that's my advice these days. Look for something local. Over the road trucking is not what it used to be.
Content for independence. Did you have to deal with brokers, or were you leased to carriers running their freight?
I've done both, but mostly
Done it all.
Hey? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't particularly care for working for load brokers. I found them cheap. I don't know how else to say it. I was much happier finding my own freight. I didn't much working for load brokers. I didn't much care for that. And, you know, don't get me wrong, every once in a while I still had to, because I couldn't get out of some place. But no, I preferred having my own freight. And a lot of times I would just run empty to where my customer needed me, rather than look for some load broker load in between and then take the chance of not getting paid, because some of those guys are notorious for that. And yeah, no, I didn't care for load broker freight very much.
Thanks to your videos, I left trucking. You saved me from a life of regret. I no longer have to choose between the best gift wrap turd when selecting a trucking company.
It's not like it used to be. That's a funny comment. It's, you know, there was a time when over the road trucking was pretty good, but those days are gone, unless you're with a select few carriers or something like that. That's funny. And for the most part, yeah, it's pretty sad the way they treat their drivers these days over the road.
Don Root, Ontario Food Terminal. You been there?
Don Root, I have been there many, many, many times. I worked for Gamble's Produce for a long time.
Trucker D33. Thank you.
You're welcome. The new hours of service proposed by the FMCSA. Let's wait and see what they are. You know, it's anybody's guess, and then the ATA will get in there no matter what it is, and want something different, something that'll benefit them. So definitely the hours of service need more flexibility, a lot more flexibility. But, you know, there are all these political influences on it now, and no practical common sense involved. So we'll just have to see what they finally come up with. But my guess is it'd be like every other time they've tried. It'll be full of flaws and stupid ideas, but let's give them another chance. What else can we do?
Someone's asked you about, do you prefer mileage or percentage?
These days I prefer neither. They jap you on both. So no, by the hour.
Utility or Great Dane?
Oh, there's a good question. I've owned both. I preferred Great Dane myself. I always had good luck with them. They're both very good trailers, don't get me wrong, but I ran Great Danes and I was quite happy with them. And part of the reason too was I had an excellent dealership behind me, so that's a big part of the battle too.
Jamie says, Prime treats me very well. A good starter company to get your CDL.
Good to know. I think Prime is good to its company guys. I would avoid the Never Never plan, the lease operator deal like the plague. But I think I've always heard good things about their company drivers, and they always seem to be happy. So.
Someone's asked if you still own your 379, or you drive someone else's truck now.
I still own my 379. It's kind of my pet project, but I drive somebody else's truck now. I drive for a little lumber company locally, and it's a brand new little Freightliner. I've never driven a truck like that before. It's a new thing for me, but it's not something I take to a truck show. But I get a pretty good paycheck at the end of the day, and I'm on back roads and stuff, and I like that. So both still. And my new little company truck is an automatic. That's the first time I've ever had one of those. So that's a learning experience. Best thing I like about the automatic is I can drive and eat a slice of pizza at the same time and not having to worry about shifting gears. That's handy.
Peterbilt, Kenworth, or PACCAR?
Well, PACCAR owns both Kenworth and Pete. I've had both. I find there's good things about both of them. There are some things that Kenworth does better, some things Pete does better. And what I used to do is just shop the two of them when I was ready for a new truck, and whoever came in with the better price is what I would buy. But I'd buy either one. I found they were both excellent trucks.
Shannon, lumber is a lot of fun except for drywall.
Yeah, Shannon, I'm not a big fan of the drywall. And I don't get a whole lot of it because drywall season seems to be, in the winter months, and I don't work through the winter. But yeah, you're right. Drywall's no fun at all.
I hate drywall.
I hate drywall. And I hate big windows too. I hate hauling big windows because they want you to carry them and set them up. I don't like that.
I've been driving around 8 years, and I've noticed that parking is a little bad, especially with the closing of rest areas. What's your opinion on parking?
I think parking is a huge problem, and I can't understand why they can't do more about it. Now, everybody looks to the private sector. Everybody looks to the truck stops to provide more and more parking. Well, I don't know why the truck stops should be investing in parking and paving all of that. I think it's up to the government to provide safe places for us to land and stuff. They shouldn't rely on the truck stops, but that's what they do. And you get into areas like Northern Ontario, there's it's really scanty at best. They mandate that you pull over after so many hours. They don't want you on the shoulder of the road. They don't want you on an off ramp. They don't want you in a plow turnaround. They just leave it up to you, and you got to wing it as best you can. And I think that's a huge problem. In the States as well, if you're not west of the Mississippi, it can be a hard time finding a place to park at night. You literally have to stop now at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon to get a parking spot or pay for one later on. So, no, huge problem.
Bobby, how do I justify getting a Kenworth or a Pete with an old cat in it instead of a DD60 and a freight shaker for 50 grand or less?
Good question. I find there's longevity and resale in the PACCAR products, whereas Freightliner doesn't have that. And the Freightliner, the little Freightliner that I'm driving now, it's just a year old, and it's already been in for warranty work 3 or 4 times already. And I live in a small town up north, and there's no Freightliner dealer here, so you got to spend your day running it down to the dealer. Sometimes you got to leave it there. Sometimes you got to come back. The older trucks, you can fix them yourself, or there'll be local guys that know how to work on them. I prefer the older trucks myself, just because they're simpler.
Trucker D33, thank you.
You're welcome, Trucker D33.
No, we're thanking him.
Oh, okay. My technical engineer here to the right.
Trucker D33, I drive local triaxle dump and I love it. An old 2003 Mack with an 8-liter tranny. Did OTR for 2 years.
Oh, an 8LL.
Yes, an 8LL. Did OTR for 2 years. I'll never go back.
Yeah, I hear that. How do you like that tranny? They didn't seem to stick around that long. I drove one for a little while. Didn't own it, but I drove one. And the jump to the top hole was pretty tall. So if you weren't running downhill with a tailwind, you had trouble getting it up there. But it had the wrong gears in the back end, so I'm sure that was part of it.
Have you done any log hauling?
Log hauling? Yes. A little of it. Not like the guys in BC. Those guys are log haulers out there, or Oregon or Washington. Those guys are log haulers. We don't have that same type of thing where I am. Mostly it's cut lumber, but it's pretty interesting. It's hard work. It's dirty work, and I haven't done a whole lot of it. I'd like to do it in BC sometime, but too far to drive. I'm happy here in Northern Ontario.
20 years ago, do you think the rookies were different compared to today's rookies?
God, yes, do I ever. I could go on and on about that. Yeah, the rookies 20 years ago were generally country boys off the farm that had driven their dad's trucks at the farm, and they knew what they were doing. They knew how to fix them. They knew how to drive them. These days, the rookie drivers don't. A lot of them don't seem to have any sort of a trucking or mechanical background. So it's a whole new thing to them. A lot of these guys. So yeah, I think it's a way different crowd than it was 20 years ago.
Jim Phelps, enjoying the video is very helpful. Any insight on what the near future might hold for hours of service?
You know, I wish I had a crystal ball, Jim. I don't know what they've got in mind. They're always back and forth. The MAD group and those people want fewer hours of service. The ATA wants more hours of service, and safety is just right out the window. And I think the driver should be able to call when he's tired and needs to rest. I don't think any of these groups should dictate to the truck driver when he needs to sleep. I think that's a crazy system. So hopefully, we'll get some flexibility here and some common sense. But I'm not holding my breath.
If we don't unionize, we will be driven out by self-driving vehicles.
That's an interesting thing. Even if we are unionized, I'm not sure that we'll be able to survive the self-driving vehicles if they ever come to be. And don't let these guys kid you. They're years and years and years away from that yet. They can make them work in Arizona or a dry climate like that, but when it comes to getting them to control themselves on ice and in the snow, like up here and most other places, they're 100 years away from mastering that if they ever do. And I listened to an interesting show the other day on talk radio, and they were talking about what they can program these autonomous trucks to sense in front of them and what they can't. And basically it's a size thing. And they're trying to decide, well, should we make it so sensitive that the truck will slam on its brakes for a child? Because what are the odds? And they weigh this back and forth because they don't want the truck hitting the brakes every time a cat or a raccoon runs across the road. But they can't differentiate, the truck can't differentiate between a small child and a raccoon or a dog or something like that. And the industry, this autonomous industry, is saying, well, what are the chances it's going to be a kid? And they're setting up the trucks to, if it's not, the size of a 300-pound man crossing the road, they figure the cheapest way to do it is to have the autonomous truck just run them over. I'm thinking, oh my God, and it's unbelievable thinking. Crazy.
George, I'm not even a trucker, but I watch your channel so I can keep my A game when the snowbirds come back in October.
Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Bobby Hardcastle, I think it's great that your wife is so involved in your career. You know what? I couldn't have done it without her, honestly, because it takes two people to run a truck, because one needs to run the office and one needs to drive the damn thing. I did all the driving, but she monitored all the money and everything else, because there just aren't enough hours in the day to do both yourself. So yeah, I couldn't have made it without her. I'm surprised she hung in as long as she did. I'm glad she did.
We'll tell the true story someday.
Not anytime soon, though.
What are your thoughts on the 65-mile-an-hour rule?
I'm assuming that you mean as far as governing the trucks is concerned, and I'm not in favor of that either. You end up with roadblocks on the 4-lane because guys can't get past each other. You end up in situations on the 2-lane where you need to get by a guy and pass a guy, and you just don't have the oomph to do it. I don't agree with it. I understand that the caliber of drivers now that we get sometimes, because the industry is so desperate for drivers, isn't the same, and they need to be more controlled. But I think if you can't find a guy that you can't trust to drive the truck properly, you got the wrong guy. And I don't think any amount of electronic control is a good thing. If you can't find a good driver, you're doing something wrong. You're not paying enough for something like that. You can't. I don't believe in relying on electronics to drive the truck.
Do you think Class A and Class B CDL should have the same rules and regs as far as hours of service goes?
You know what? I've never thought of that. That's an
Good
interesting
question.
question. I'd have to chew on that for a while. You know, it depends. The hours of service in Canada here are different in the U.S., and I think the hours of service in the U.S. are far superior. But as far as the two licensing groups having the same amount of set hours, I'm going to have to think about that. That's a really good question.
What is a good hourly pay rate for van company driver in Ontario?
Another good question. Again, it kind of depends on where you live. If you live in Toronto, you should definitely be commanding more money than if you live in some small town like I do. But I think a minimum of $25 an hour, and that's for guys that live in little towns. I in the city, 35, 45, $50 an hour, because the cost of living is so much higher. Why do it if you can't pay your bills? So.
My dad wants to buy an old truck with a rebuilt 98 engine to get rid of the ELD. Good or bad idea?
Depends on what kind of trucking he's going to do with it. Off the top of my head, I'd say it's a good idea. But if he's going to try to sneak in and out of California with it, not a good idea, because the chances are he'll get in trouble. But if you're just running local with it or something like that, good idea all day long.
A few people have commented they'd like to consider helping us unionize.
Oh man, I could go on and on about that. The unions, when they were doing it right, they were a great thing, and then they became corrupted, and it got to be a crooked system. Guys twisted the system and wrecked it for everybody. If they could control it and have a good, honest union, it would be a great thing. But it seems so hard to keep corruption out of the formula. But yeah, it would be the answer if we could do it properly.
I haven't had my Class 1 long, but I like the newer Volvos. Fewer emissions problems from what I see. Your opinion? I have mechanical aptitude, and my grandfather drove for Phoenix Superlines.
I'm not a big fan of the Volvos, but I hear good things about them. I know they ride well. I've heard too that they have fewer problems and better technology when it comes to handling the emissions and stuff. There are good things and bad things about everything, including all different types of trucks. So if you're mechanically inclined and the Volvo suits you, and you can minimize the downtime and make money with it, why not? That's what it's all about.
Someone in the chat is a Teamster driver.
Huh? Really? Yeah, I was a Teamster for a little while, and it was kind of nice. I liked it because they had my back, but I didn't like it because, of course, being new to it at the time, I was at the bottom of the pole, and when the freight was slow, the senior guys would take all the loads, and I'd literally starve to death one winter. So, like everything else, good things and bad things about it.
What's your opinion on the DEF system?
Oh boy, I don't like it. I don't like it. I think it is a costly patch solution to the problem. I'm all for clean air, but this DEF seems to create more trouble and more problems than it solves. It's an expense. Guys that quote operating costs, like salesmen at trucking companies, tend to not talk about the cost of the DEF. And this little truck that I'm driving goes through 2-3 gallon jugs of it a week, and I'm just running short. So I can't imagine the cost over the year of this stuff. But it's an added expense, and the rates don't cover the cost of that either. So I think they need a better solution. What's my opinion on the automatic transmission? Well, like I say, it's nice if you're trying to drive and eat pizza at the same time, but I find I have less control over when the truck, I would shift at a different time than when the truck chooses to shift. I find it skittish and ugly weather. So if I wouldn't buy one, they're more expensive. I prefer the standard.
Railhead, thank you for everything.
Well, our pleasure, sir.
No, we're thanking him.
Oh.
You gotta get this right.
Technology.
If you had a choice of electric truck, which would you choose?
I'm assuming you mean the new electric trucks coming down the pike here. Mm-hmm. And what's the name of that one? I think they're out of Utah called Nokia or
Nokia?
Yeah, I like those things. I think that they're going to end up taking over the market. What's his name there is a real big dreamer, but he's got some issues to solve. What's the guy's name?
Yes.
Can't think of it, but Elon Musk. I think he's got a lot to learn about making trucks.
Are truckers in Canada behaving well on the road with the speed governing in trucks?
It's a nightmare here. It's to the point where our biggest highway here in Ontario is the 401, and I don't even like to travel the 401 anymore. It's just a nightmare, and a lot of it's because the trucks are governed. A lot of it is because it's all rookie drivers in the trucks because that's all they can find anymore. So it's not working well here at all. But here in Ontario, they're slow learners when it comes to the trucking industry.
What's your thoughts on bridge law?
You'd want to talk to an engineer rather than me. I understand the concept of it, but if they'd kept up with the infrastructure and repair in the first place, we wouldn't have to worry about stuff like that. And they violate it all the time. It's anytime some guy wants an overload or a heavyweight permit, bridge law just goes out the window anyway. So what's the point? Pick a set of rules, pick a set of standards, and stick to it.
What's your take on Walmart's fleet?
My understanding of Walmart's fleet in the U.S. is that it's a very professional operation, very well run. I think those guys make good money. They're treated well. It's from what I've seen in Canada, all they do is farm the work out to a carrier. There is no true Walmart fleet up here, as far as I know. But it's a well-respected fleet down in the States. Good place to work.
Now, I've lost the comment, but someone mentioned about the DEF fluid that they've now discovered, and I remember reading that they've proven it to cause cancer.
Yes, I read something about that too, and it's just the wrong idea. I'm all for clean air, but if we had been given more time, if the engineers had been given more time, I'm sure they could have perfected a better system. But it was just, politicians jumped the gun and let's make this happen in 3 years, and then throw it to the engineers, and the engineers are going, oh my God, how's this going to work? And it's a patch solution, I think.
I think companies need to stress how much wait time there is in trucking. Astronomical amount of wait time. That's a huge issue.
It's a huge issue, and I think the moment you anchor that thing at a dock, you should be by the hour. I don't think there's any of this, the first 2 hours free, or $25 for a pick if it takes you 4 hours to make it. I think that's crazy. I think that's why I advocate for by the hour anymore, because these carriers and these shippers and receivers take advantage of the drivers. You lose time, you lose money, and it's okay with everybody except you. And that doesn't cut it for me. That's why I advocate by the hour, for every hour you're at work.
More or less, how much money should I need to begin as an owner-operator? That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. If you're talking gross...
Well, I think he's saying, what do I need to begin? How much money to start an owner-operator business? It's a hard question.
Yeah, I'd want to have 20 grand in the bank.
At least. Or a credit line.
And a credit line as backup. Because sometimes as an owner-operator, you'll get in with a carrier you think is going to be honest with you, and they'll just screw you into the ground, and you've got to have enough money to be able to move and find something else to keep going and support yourself. And that's tough, because the old company will hold back your pay for 90 days. The new company won't pay you until you've done a few runs for a few weeks, and it doesn't take long, especially when you've got truck payments and fuel payments and all that stuff. It doesn't take very long to chew through a whole lot of money. So you want to have a lot of money behind you even to get into it. I don't even think it's probably a good idea for most guys anymore to have a truck. There was a day when it was financially advantageous to own it. There's very few places anymore that I think is advantageous to buy a truck. You're better as a company guy.
I missed the full question, but one fellow asked about the warming up and cooling down of a diesel engine, that people really don't seem to do that anymore with the newer engines. What's your opinion on that?
You know what? That's a really good point. I was always an advocate of proper warm up and cooling down period. My truck has what they call a hanky timer, and what you could do is crank it like an egg timer, basically. Shut the truck off, lock it, walk away, and the truck would idle itself down, cool itself off, and shut itself off in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, whatever you set it to. And you hear the manufacturers say, oh, it doesn't need it now, but the manufacturers are interested in making money, and I think it's a very necessary thing to warm it up and cool it down properly. Very important, I think. Yeah, hourly only. Their truck, their freight. Good comment. Absolutely.
That was my comment.
Okay. Can I get a question in, please?
Yes.
Chef Recreational. We're waiting. What's the question?
I am going to TMC to start my 3-week schooling to get my CDL with them. I have to stay with them for 1 year after getting my CDL. What's your opinion about TMC?
I hear good things about TMC. They've got nice equipment. I know that for sure. From what I've seen, they have a pretty good training program too. I like TMC as a company. I think that if you don't care for it, the year will fly by quickly. I wouldn't be afraid of that at all. It would be, if I was starting out new, it would be one of the, and I lived in that area, like Iowa, I think they're in, and I would seriously consider them. They're a pretty good outfit.
On your opinion on Landstar?
Landstar, I think you should be in trucking for a while before you go into Landstar, because Landstar is basically a company that runs you as an independent, but wants you to use what they call their agents, which are really load brokers all over the country, and you learn what you need to get for a rate, and it can be a tough go. I understand from Landstar guys that I know that if you stick in an area where they're freight heavy, it's not a bad deal. But if you end up in the middle of nowhere and you're with Landstar, you can run 1,000 miles to find a load too. So, I think it's like everything else. There are good things and bad things about it. If you're going to go to the trouble to find your own loads, I don't understand why you'd need Landstar to do it, because half those guys, most of those agents are just load brokers. So why are you giving Landstar a cut when you can find the freight yourself? But some people like Landstar. Some people have made good money there.
Do you think it will ever be beneficial again to own a truck again versus being a company driver? No, I'm not sure if they mean you specifically.
If these days, if you could get the right customer, it would still be, and he had the right mindset, you could still make decent money owning your own truck. But those guys are so few and far between now, it's not funny, because everybody wants to do it cheaper. And if you own the truck, you can't afford to work for a guy that's looking at what your rate is, and then they look at CRST or somebody like that. So you just can't afford to do that anymore, unless you've got a solid customer with a high quality product that says, you know what, I don't want CRST or Swift or somebody like that shipping my freight. I want to make sure that it gets there in one piece when it's supposed to be there. That's a good customer to find and to have. But everybody concentrates on saving the dollar anymore, so pretty tough on a guy that owns a truck.
What makes a good dispatcher?
That's a really good question. For the most part, I am of the opinion that a good dispatcher is someone that has driven truck for an extended period of time because they have the experience, they know what you're going through. Having said that, a couple of the best dispatchers that I ever had, and I'm thinking of Jeff Brown here, never drove a truck in their life, but they were smart boys. They were common sense boys, and they could see past the end of their noses. You know, they could see things that were going to come up and happen to you, and they would work with you to help you if you had a receiver that wasn't cooperating for a time schedule or something like that. So I think it boils down to the individual. If you get a bright individual that understands the industry, that's really great. But I found most of those guys were guys that have driven.
There's a good question by Marty. How do Canadians get into the United States? Do they have an enhanced driver's license?
Huh. I haven't had to do that recently. It used to be, oh God, they just used to look at your driver's license. Then they went to this passport system. Then I had to get a fast card. Now I understand that they're going to an enhanced license. I don't know if that's in effect yet, but it's whatever the U.S. is demanding now for doing that. And the fast card still works as far as I know for just about everybody else. And you've got to go to the States to get one. So
my company recently dropped the rate from 70 cents to 66 cents for Team Toronto. To California, I lost it. He said, should I go back to hourly rate?
Absolutely go back to hourly rate. The cost of living isn't going to drop with your wages. Stuff just gets more and more expensive every year. And you know that. The gas, your mortgage, everything. Everything goes up. It's just the way of the world. So why would you take a pay cut now? Yep, get out of there.
What's your opinion on the mega carriers buying out the smaller companies like Transforce buying out Laidlaw, GBT, and even larger companies like CFI?
That's a fascinating thing to me. They can't make any more money, so they try to make more money by volume. So they find a smaller carrier with good freight and buy them up. And so what they're trying to do is just control all the freight, and then their theory is that they'll jack the rate. But that's crazy long-term thinking in my mind. Rather than trying to go cheap and run volume, why don't they just all get together and jack the rates up so everybody's making money? But they're all too scared and too cheap and too foolish to do that. So they keep buying out these smaller companies, and maybe they'll end up making money 20, 30, 50 years from now. But I think it's the wrong way to go.
Your opinion of digital load boards such as Convoy, Hunt 360, Uber Freight, etc. Digital load boards.
Yeah, again, at the end of the day, you're dealing with load brokers.
It's still all the same.
It's all the same. You have to chase your money, and you work hard enough without having to chase your money. I'm not a load board fan at all.
You just do not know what you're getting into.
Yeah, you have no idea who you're dealing with and whether you're going to get paid.
Somebody else would like you to start a truckers union.
I'd be the wrong guy to start a union.
You need an hourly rate.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a black and white, take it or leave it kind of guy. I'm not much of a negotiator. They'd say, "Oh, we're not doing that." I'd say, "Fine, see you later." That would be the end of my negotiating tactic.
Or you'd hit someone.
Or I'd hit someone. Yeah, maybe.
There is a question that you will love. This question might be out of line, but how does recreational marijuana affect the CDL driver in Canada? Just curious, but we really don't know because it hasn't really been established.
They won't come out and draw a hard line. So it's hard to say. Do I think it's a good thing? No. But we've got a foolish prime minister and he's running the show, so.
We have someone else who's trying to get a question, and we're waiting. If not load boards, then what do you recommend?
I recommend getting your own customers,
Yes.
doing a little
Footwork
and salesmanship and solicitation, and getting your own customers.
Yeah,
That's what I recommend.
It's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's highly beneficial in the long run.
Well, it's the only way for sustainability long term.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't even understand really how we managed to get load brokers into this business in the first place. It's just, why have a middle guy? The rates are so bad now. Why are you having a middle guy that takes 10 to 20%? You just can't afford that.
Yes, if you're driving commercial, no weed. That's simple.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that there's zero tolerance. But how are they going to enforce that? They have no way to do it. So what good's the rule?
Any ideas how to push brokers out? Don't use them.
Yeah, just don't use them. Yeah, just go find your own freight. Get your authority, get your freight, and just don't use them.
What do you think of the PACCAR motor?
I like the concept. I like the motor. My understanding of the PACCAR engine is that when it has issues, they're not mechanical issues. They're sensor and sending unit issues. And if I had a PACCAR motor, I'd keep on top of the motor and blank out all the sensors and just run it like an older style truck if the motor will let you.
Here's a good one. If a mega trucking company offered you a job in their office, would you take it? But they wouldn't let you have this outlet form.
No, I wouldn't take it. No.
I could have answered that.
Not a hope.
And why is that?
Well, I have my own mind. I don't want some mega carrier dictating to me how I'll treat people and how I'll treat drivers and having to enforce rules that I think are stupid, and I can go on and on. I wouldn't work for a mega carrier, period. I tried it once briefly. I didn't last very long. So no, not a hope.
Jay, good evening. Watching on my 30-minute break. There's a way to spend your 30-minute break.
There's a good way to spend it, yeah. Appreciate it, Jay.
What about Amazon? What about working with Amazon?
Amazon is now leading the push on cheap freight. Amazon is going to be one of the biggest hazards in the near future of trucking. They want everything cheaper. They want everything faster. They're the new FedEx or Walmart of trucking. I wouldn't even pin up to an Amazon load.
Why is the speed limit in California 55?
Why? Because that's what California wants. They feel that trucks are big polluters. Trucks are a danger on the road. They've got what they consider big hills in California, and they're afraid of runaways and stuff like that. That's just California. They're always the leaders in rule making when it comes to a lot of things. Don't get me wrong. I really like trucking in California. Some of their rules are good. Some of their rules are bad. Some of the rules now that they have are better now that when we look at the newer drivers, the rookie drivers, some of those rules that didn't make sense to us now make sense to me, like the speed limit and stuff. So, but I always liked going there. It was my favorite place to go, I think.
There's somebody who's going to get a timeout. I can catch up to him. Best way to secure paper rolls in a dry van.
I assume you're talking about
Paper.
the great big heavy commercial paper rolls. Like they I don't know if they manufacture them up in Temiskaming anymore or not, but the best way I ever saw to secure those things were those integral, the big heavy load locks that clip into either side of the wall. Like the regular load locks like produce haulers like me used didn't cut it because of the weight. But I think if you got logistics track, I guess is what they call it now, and the big heavy bars, I think that's the best way to secure those things. We used to haul those in reefers, but you really had to be gentle with it.
Dylan asks, if I'm just starting out driving, which is the better choice, over the road or local?
if you're into a long-term career and you really want to do over the road, why not start out there and give it a try? Especially if you're a single guy and your bills are in control and stuff like that. Everybody wants to try that, but I wouldn't recommend sticking with it very long.
And more job
Yep,
opportunities.
there's a lot more job opportunities, but try it, get it out of your system. But if you've got a family and stuff like that, don't stay at it very long and get into local trucking by the hour. But I understand that call of the road. I had that myself, had to go do it, and I just stayed in it too long. But yeah, if you need to try it, try it. But it's no living, it's no future anymore.
Alex asked, did you eat at truck stops or eat in the truck? He's found food to be a pretty big expense.
Food's a huge expense. Now, to be honest with you, I ate in the truck occasionally, but for the most part, I ate at Petro truck stops, and well, frankly, I was making pretty good money, so I could afford to do that. It wasn't a huge deal for me. But these days, what the guys are getting paid, you can afford a Subway sandwich or something like that these days, and you got to run. And I had food poisoning from Subway once, and so I never forgave them. But these days, it seems to be a better idea to eat out of the truck. You can more readily afford it. You're more guaranteed to have food that won't give you food poisoning and that type of thing.
Dindu, thank you very much. He says, thank you for saving me from the Never Never plan. I almost fell for it. Thank you for the donation.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for the support. We appreciate it. Glad you didn't fall for it.
Yeah, Jamie Godwin, I love over the road. You know what? So did I when I was running where I like to run. I didn't like over the road when I was in New England or New Jersey or something like that. But when I was out west, yeah, I loved it.
What is, okay, I've missed it, but it was, what is the craziest law or regulation that you know of in the trucking industry?
Oh, Lord.
Where do you start?
Yeah, where do you start?
What was one that used to drive you crazy? Hours of service is one.
Yeah, probably the hours of service would bother me. I guess the one that used to drive me craziest is when the E-logs came in and you get caught in a traffic jam and you could see your hours running out and you're stuck in this traffic jam outside Chicago or something, and then the law said the law said, well, you're just going to have to park on the shoulder or something because you're out of hours. I think that's the most aggravating one that I ever had to deal with. And I just ignore it. I just go to the safest truck stop, and if I had to run another 20 minutes to do that, that's what I did.
Why don't you tell the one of the trucking company that you were an owner-operator at, where they would ask to do you a favor and then you would end up losing your safety bonus because you'd run out of hours?
Yeah, I tried working for this tanker company for a little while. And they, you know how trucking companies always need favors. They always want, oh, can you help us out? Can you help us out? And then doing them a little favor, and on the E-log, it would add your hours, and then you wouldn't have enough hours left, and they wouldn't give you a load. So you'd be stuck for the weekend because you'd helped them out and picked up some trailer or something.
No, you would be penalized and lose your safety bonus. He'd lose about a $600 safety bonus doing them a favor.
Yep. So just, dirty bastards.
Careful.
I learned with that company to make them put everything in print and send it to me on the Qualcomm or whatever they called the damn thing. Put it in print, and then they didn't want to do it. They would call you on the phone and say, I need this, but they wouldn't put it in print because you could use it against them later. So
somebody's buddy knows the Lettuce King as well. He's famous. He's famous.
He is famous.
Tell him about his project.
He's building.
The Lettuce King has got a project.
He's building a new 359 right now as we speak. We're supposed to go down and see the new truck here in a few weeks.
We're going to film it, but he's built it right up from scratch.
Yeah, as he's done before, and he always makes some awesome looking equipment. So we're looking forward to seeing it.
Why do mega carriers refuse to pay all waiting time? Why after 2 hours?
Well, because the mega carriers are trying to get you to work for as little as possible. Drivers are an expense for them. It comes off their bottom line, and they're in the business to make money, and they don't care about their people. They just want to make money. So the cheaper they can get their drivers to work, the happier they are. And whatever they can beat the drivers for, it's more money in their pocket. And a lot of times they're publicly traded. So they answer to shareholders. And if shareholders don't make what they consider good money, then they won't buy the stock. They'll sell the stock. So these mega carriers answer to Wall Street, and the easiest solution for them is to pay the drivers as little as possible so the guys with the stock make as much money as possible so they can keep going and give the CEO a 6-digit salary in the meantime.
NK states that does the OOIDA really have the drivers back? He feels lately it appears they do not.
Why do you feel that? I'd be interested in knowing. Please reply to that, because for the most part I'd say that the OOIDA does, if anybody does. But I'd be curious on your take, please.
Might be something specific.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Do you know Roger Adams? Roger Adams knows you.
Where would I know you from, Roger?
It's not Roger, it's somebody's.
Where would I know him from? The name sounds familiar.
Why does Ontario, Canada have the highest tonnage of Class 8 loaded weight on trucks in North America?
Well, there's a good question. Because our politicians know nothing about trucking is the answer. They complain about their roads collapsing, but they don't understand why, and you're allowed to haul 140,000 gross up here, and I don't understand why Ontario and the rest of Canada don't look at the U.S. The U.S. has got trucking perfected for the most part as far as weights and measures are concerned, with the exception of Michigan and a few places like that. Excuse me. But, here we are with our neighbors to the south. They've got this system down to a fine science, and Canada chooses to reinvent the wheel and not do a very good job of it. And I don't get that.
Shannon asks about the projected trucking shortage. I hear it more often these days. Is there any truth to it?
There certainly is truth to that, Shannon, because more and more companies and carriers and truck drivers are making less and less money because they've got the rates so low and the costs are so high, and people are getting out of it in droves, and it's been going on for years now. So, and the mega carriers like that because they try to slide in and close the gaps, but those guys are all living on volume, and I don't think that's any way to run a business. But
here's a good question. What was the best decade of trucking in your career?
That is a good question, and probably
good one.
Probably the 70s, I would say.
Why?
Because the money was really good in the 70s. It all boiled down to money. We worked like dogs, but we were well paid, and the equipment was really nice.
Things were good really up until about 2006, and that's when they took
that's about right.
Biggest dip.
Yeah, about 2006 we found anyway.
It never really gained ground.
Yeah.
Again. So did you say the 70s or the 80s?
Yeah, I said the 70s. There were no logbooks. We ran like buggers, but we made serious money, and nobody died from that. We didn't have guys falling asleep at the wheel. They stopped and rested when they needed rest, and they went when they could go again. And if they had a slack load, they took their time. If they had a hot load, they ran. But I thought it was better anyway. I thought we made much better money then.
Did you have any health issues hauling fuel, like any lung problems or damaged skin? I'm 32 and thinking about being a local fuel hauler, but scared of the long-term health issues.
That's an interesting question. I hauled fuel for what, Kathy, about 7 years?
Yeah.
And Kathy used to complain that when I came home, it was in my pores. She could smell it on me. Even after a shower, it seemed to seep out of my pores. And you just know that can't be good for you. Now, all these years later, I don't seem to have any repercussions from that, but I don't think that there's any doubt that it gets into your system.
You were tested at one time, and you had high levels of lead.
Yes, that's true. I did have high levels of lead.
Mr. Friggy, thank you. Thank you for your donation. In your rookie days, what was your worst mistake? Like little scrapes, knocking over signs? Just kidding about the signs. You're not a Swift driver. Be cool to hear a story. Got a story for him?
Yeah, I got a story for you. Back in the 70s, I was, as a new driver, I was assigned what we called an A-train configuration. So it was a big lead trailer and a little pup trailer. And those things were damn near impossible to back up straight because the pup would come around so quick. And I got caught on like a dead-end street one time and couldn't get turned around. And I had to break the thing up and get a tow truck to come and hook onto the pup and spin it around and pull it back out to me. But I got caught with that A-train configuration in a couple of spots I couldn't get out of without a wrecker. Now, when we went to B-trains later, you could back those things up, or at least I could back those things up, and much preferred the B-trains, but the A-trains were a bugger to back up.
Richard Mowbray, 1979. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking it upon yourself to keep truck drivers informed on the latest and the greatest. Thank you very much.
Thank you for saying so.
Thank you for the support.
Yes.
On fuel hauling, don't wash your clothing in the family washing machine for the same reason firefighters don't use family machines, and that's true.
Oh, that's good advice.
Because it will line the barrel of the washing machine as well.
That's good advice.
What do you think about the new speed bill in the U.S.? It would govern trucks at 65.
Yeah, we have that up here in Canada. I'm not for that. I don't support that. Now, they have, quite a few more interstates down there than we have up here. We only really have one big highway, but it's impossible to manage the truck properly because when you need to pass, you can't. You end up drag racing beside another guy for miles, and you can't get around him, and he can't get around you. I'm not a supporter of that. I think if you need speed governing, you got the wrong guy in the truck. Or the wrong carrier.
What year did you start trucking?
Like 1975, I guess.
76.
76? 1975 or 76, somewhere in there.
Speed limiters suck. Need to speed to get out of situations.
That's right. It's exactly right.
That's what happens. Very unsafe. You think the ATA is behind the 65-mile-an-hour bill for more profit?
Absolutely, they're behind the bill. You bet they are. They'll save fuel.
Someone asked if you had ever hauled cars.
I hauled cars for a little while in an enclosed trailer, like a reliable trailer. I did that for a little while. That was pretty interesting. I liked it, and they were high quality cars. You had to be very careful with them. But yeah, I did that for a little while and enjoyed it.
65 miles an hour is dangerously slow on the Canadian Highway 401 in places with average cars traveling at 110 clicks to 120 clicks or sometime more speed.
Yeah, I agree. And the way the four-wheelers run on the 401, you're just a target waiting to be hit by those guys down there. And I think it's goofy.
Someone had made a point about the trucks traveling faster and yet then the hourly rate and their wages are lower, but yet the trucks travel faster.
Yeah, there's no common sense to it. I don't know who's making the rules, but it's nobody with a brain.
What's your favorite trucker movie?
Probably Smokey and the Bandit, because I got a kick out of Burt Reynolds. There was a lot of fallacy in that movie, but I thought he was funny.
What was the worst load you ever hauled? Charles.
I was pretty selective about what I hauled, and I'm kind of a picky guy, and I can't really say that I ever had anything that I didn't really care for. I did a little work with stainless chemical trailers. And a couple of times I had like half loads, like about 3,000 gallons in a 6,000 gallon trailer, and the load would smash back and forth. So, and I had no choice with that. It was just my backhaul that they assigned me, and I didn't care for that very much, especially when the roads were icy. But I guess that'd be the worst thing I'd ever hauled.
Ghost Rider, do you think one can make money? The message is gone. I believe he said with vans, or do you need to be hauling reefer?
I don't think there's any money in van work anymore. It's so controlled by the mega carriers.
Not good money.
Yeah, they've got the rates in the toilet. What profit there is, they take it. No, I don't think anyone's making money with a dry van anymore.
Mark Roberts has asked, ever haul swinging meat?
Yes, Mark Roberts, I sure as heck have. And I never had any problem with it, liked it. But yeah, I've hauled an awful lot of swinging meat.
Green meat, too.
Yeah, yes, I picked up a load in Brooks, Alberta one time that went bad.
Any disasters in your trucking career?
No. I was lucky that way, and don't get me wrong, there's skill involved in having a career in trucking, but there's also a lot of luck, because just sometimes, no matter how good you are, you end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somebody slides into you or something like that. I never had that, but it was as much luck as anything else. And I thank my lucky stars for that. I don't know if I could have lived with myself if I'd have hurt or killed someone.
Support from the crafty trucker. Thank you very much. Y'all provide some great information for drivers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thoughts on local jobs like UPS, FedEx, newly licensed but prefer to work local hourly rate or regional for an hourly rate?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear good things about UPS, especially if you live in big hub cities. I hear good things about them. They're unionized. They pay very well. You kind of gotta wear goofy outfits, but no, I think they're a good deal.
You had to wear a uniform at one point, I remember.
Yeah, I didn't do very well with that. They gave me a uniform at this one place I was, and I wore it for about a week, and I thought, I didn't let my mother dress me, so I'm not wearing this uniform, and I quit wearing it, and
you stopped working there.
I believe I did, yes.
Most profitable trailer to pull?
These days, probably, from what I understand, probably flatbed. There's still guys getting pretty good money for specialized flatbed stuff, so probably flatbed or drop deck.
What do you think of the lack of brotherhood amongst truckers these days? Seems that everyone is all about themselves, but I'll start with that one, saying that just tends to be society in general, I think.
It's a good point. And back years ago, I don't know how to say this, but everyone spoke the same language and everybody had CBs. And part of it now is that everyone's on their cell phones and they're texting, there are no CBs, and there are all different cultures involved in trucking now. So I think it was inevitable, but I miss the camaraderie.
Jay Hinton, I'll wear goofy uniforms for the right pay.
that's the right attitude.
Good point.
That's the right attitude. And if you have to drive with a paper bag over your head, do it for the money.
I feel like I'm the only one with a CB.
You might well be. They were an amazing tool back in the day, but that day seems to be gone. But I still run a CB, but yeah, they're a thing of the past pretty much.
Charles Dyer, are you still hauling with the Pete, or are you just using it to go to Walmart?
No, I'm just using the Pete to go to Walmart, and I go for coffee with it or stuff like that. And pizza, yeah, but no, I just use the Pete to play with.
It's the pizza truck.
Yeah.
Everyone should have a CB.
Yeah, I
agree.
Everybody should have a CB. Mm-hmm. They were a great thing. That was, we made so many new friends on CB radios back then. It was how we all stayed connected. That's how we met people, how we got directions.
Talk a bit about safety in truck stops and roadside stops, briefly.
Briefly, I never used rest areas because I found a lot of them were unsafe, particularly east of the Mississippi. But I avoided rest areas. Truck stops, I would be very selective about my truck stops. I stayed at Petros as much as I could, or a TA if it was a good one. There were some ugly TAs, but there were some good TAs. But that's a big deal in trucking, to make sure you land someplace safe. And that was a big part of my day, was picking the next truck stop I was going to land at, because I wouldn't stay in some crap hole for all sorts of reasons, but safety was the biggest one of them. And that's a challenge.
Nowadays, people just complain on the CBs.
Yeah, I remember going through Reno back a few years ago, and it was just like CB Rambo heaven, and I remember being so disappointed on what the CB has become compared to what it used to be.
How do some of the guys run with such little window available after they put on the sun visors?
That's a good question. I like a little bit of style, but not if it interrupts function. And you see these guys with the big drop visors, and they're at a stoplight in town, and they're literally lying across the passenger seat so they can see when the light turns green. And I think that's hilarious and a little bit dangerous. Like, I like a drop visor. I like the look. Don't get me wrong. But when you block off the top half of the windshield, the whole top half of the windshield, and you can't see a stoplight, I think that's going a little too far.
Steer tire blowouts can be almost impossible to control if they govern trucks.
Yeah, steer tire blowouts can be almost impossible to control whether they govern the truck or not. It's a tricky maneuver, and again, it's as much luck as anything else. It depends on where the truck is on the road, whether you're in a curve, whether there's weight on the tire that blows, or whether there's not. I've had to experience that a couple of times, and it can be a real challenge to land the thing and anchor it safely. I've seen a lot of guys wreck because of stuff like that.
In new engines, what is a good RPM to go down the hill using the engine brake?
Well, again, depending on the motor, but my understanding of the new engines is that going downhill around 1,000 RPM is probably the best way. It depends on the motor. I think the DD15s and that take the revs a wee bit higher, but my understanding now of the new engines is that the lower the RPM in around 1,000 seems to be the preferred rev to go down the mountain. You have to work the truck to know for sure. You'll have to try it, but it's lower than it used to be.
Autonomous trucks. A word about autonomous trucks. Will they get rid of us?
Not in our lifetime. They won't. No,
it's for a long time.
They hype these autonomous trucks because they're trying to get financing and stuff like that, and they're saying they're just around the corner. They're nowhere near around the corner. There are too many problems. No, it won't be in our lifetime at all.
This Jeff says the new Kenworth's T680s will warn you if your RPMs are too high going downhill.
Is that right? Technology. I guess that's a good thing. I don't know why you'd need a warning. You should be watching the gauge, but I guess that's a good thing, as long as I agree with what the warning has to say.
What RPM do you run the Jakes on your, and I can't read the rest
on my own truck, I would run it about 1,400 going down a mountain.
Flat top or stand up? What do you prefer, and why?
I like the look of the flat top better because it's just a more traditional look. But if you're literally living out of the truck, the high bunk's the way to go. And frankly, like a custom high bunk would be the way to go. There's a real penalty when it comes to weight for those things. But if you're living in truck stops all over the countryside, you almost want to go to the bigger bunk, the better.
Albert, one of our members, says, when you say safety, do you mean getting robbed at a truck stop? Maybe you could also tell him the story about Neil being assaulted.
We had a friend that landed in one of the best truck stops in the States and was mugged because they mistook him for someone else on the CB. They thought he was a CB Rambo, and he'd heard the conversation, but they had the wrong guy. And they attacked this friend of ours, these two guys, other truck drivers, attacked our buddy over picking out the wrong guy for a CB fight. Just something, like unbelievable. So yeah, you've got to be on your toes.
Badly.
And they hurt him too.
This fellow doesn't want a flat top. Ray Steffen doesn't want a flat top because he's 6'7".
Yeah, Ray, I can see your argument there.
So Roger 1333 will have a flat top. No way, he's only 5'8".
I have a buddy that's 6'3" and still runs a flat top. So it's all your choice, I guess. And he only goes back there to sleep, so it's not like you're standing up doing laundry or anything. So.
What do you think of the K100 sleeper?
If you had the double bunk sleeper, they were gorgeous, and they were big enough that you could lie lengthways across the doghouse and into the bunk. You could almost sleep 3 people in those things. They were great. They were a beautiful truck.
I heard that PACCAR engines break down a lot more than the Cummins and Detroit diesel.
No, I haven't heard that. I've heard that PACCAR engines have sending unit trouble, but the problem is the sending unit, so you've got to blank them out. I hear the best engine these days, from what I'm hearing, is the Detroit, and up here where I live, the Cummins are the worst. The Cummins don't seem to be able to adapt to cold weather. They have DEF problems in the cold weather. They have a number of issues, and Cummins in my neck of the woods isn't known for standing behind their warranty very well. So it depends on where you are. Like in Utah, Cummins has got a great reputation for a good dealer network. Here, not so much.
How long have you been doing tanker, and what type of tanker work do you recommend?
I did about 7 years of hauling fuel, and I did about 4 years of hauling chemical. There's certainly better money in hauling chemical than there is in hauling fuel. Mm-hmm. However, of course it's a little more risky. You've got to be a little more careful, but you should be careful no matter what.
It's good money though.
But it's better money hauling chemical.
You didn't make a move without being paid for it. Every single thing you did.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, they paid for every move and all your time, and I like that. And you never touched anything. You never loaded the trailer. You never unloaded the trailer. All you had to do was get it there in one piece, and they would handle the rest. And I like that because I didn't want to be handling anything involved in chemicals.
What can you tell about the sloshing effect driving a tanker?
It's just something you adapt to and get used to. It takes you a little while to get used to it, and you've got to be really careful on a good hard corner on an icy hill going uphill or downhill or something. You've really got to be gentle with it. So it takes a sensitive hand, a steady hand to do it, but it can be done. And one of the worst things you get into is you're running in the mountains and you don't have a full load, and the load runs to the back of the trailer and your drives break traction because all the weight's on the back end. You can get into situations like that, and you've kind of got to pick your days and your spots, because there's some days when you get into ice in the mountains and you're doing the uphill run, you're better just to park and wait for the sand or stuff like that.
Red line, agreed. Detroit seems to have better reliability.
Yeah, these days that's what I'm hearing, that the Detroits are the best for reliability. And if you make your living with a truck, you've got to have reliability, so you got to keep an eye on that stuff. You can't afford to be in the shop.
Ray notes that sloshing is like swinging meat.
Yeah,
Similar.
it is kind of similar. Yeah, that's true. I find the tanker sloshing worse than the hanging meat, but yeah, they both have an uncanny motion to them.
There's a good one from Alex Amador. Have you ever hauled livestock?
No, I haven't ever hauled livestock. I and I'll tell you why. Because I'm a light sleeper, very light sleeper, and I would watch those bull rack guys in the truck stops or something like that, and the trailer never quit moving, and the noise never quit mooing, and it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me, and I don't like freight that can kick you in the head either.
And we have Josh Super Duty on tonight.
Well,
so, hi,
Josh, how are you doing? Long time no talk.
How about food grade product tankers?
My understanding of that, I didn't do very much of the food grade. Mine was mostly chemical because the chemical paid better than the food grade, so that's what I did.
You looked into food grade at one time, but you weren't impressed with the rates.
I did look into food grade, and the particular outfit that I looked at wanted to pay percentage, and I'm not a big fan of percentage because then they would demand that you would run empty for no money for long distances to reload. And I had a friend that was at that outfit, and he said it got worse and worse all the time. So, and they would insist on you picking up this load 1,000 miles away. They'd get ugly if you didn't do it, and you're basically running there for free. So, I never did do it.
A couple of good comments here. I'm missing them. Food grade equals smooth bore, mostly paid by the load.
Yeah, paid percentage, paid by the load. Now, if you get with a good company that they pay all your empty miles, or they've got a backhaul right there, and there are places like that, that's fine. But there wasn't a place up here in Ontario that I could find like that.
Stephen McCreary, how many miles should a good company have you running a week? That's a good question.
That's a good question, and these days with the speed limiters and electric logs and stuff like that, I think if you can get 3,000 miles a week, you're doing well.
That's a lot.
And you know what? And that's why money is so important, because you can't do big miles anymore because you've got so many restrictions on you. So when you get paid by the mile, you've got to get as many miles as you can, but you can't do that now. And that's another reason you should go for by the hour, because you just can't make the money anymore that you could before.
Mm-hmm. Super Duty wants to know how the Mac E7 is in the Mac MP8.
It's tough for me to say there, Josh Super Duty, because most of those trucks are used in construction applications here, as you know, and I'm not a big construction guy. I drove a Mac dump for a little while, and it ran very nicely. I liked it quite a bit, but most of my driving has been highway, and Macs weren't really used for that anywhere where I ran.
Backwoods Northwest had stated at least 2,500 to 3,000 miles a week, but not every week is going to be like that. I would think nowadays that's a pretty good run, 2,500 to 3,000. I don't know how common that is anymore.
But it's tough to get anymore to even get that, because now it's not unusual for a shipper to hold you for 6 hours. And stuff like that. It all eats into your time. So yeah, it's tough to get the miles anymore.
Stephen McCreary 3, thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Stephen. Michael Mueller, I'm with Smith Transport, and I run between 35 and 3,900 miles. Now, is that Smith Transport out of Pennsylvania? What's it called? Roaring Springs or something like that, Pennsylvania. If that's the Smith Transport you're talking about, they've been around a long time, and they're a good outfit. You don't see them like you used to as much anymore, but those are pretty good, serious miles. They're obviously a well-coordinated operation. They always were, though.
Redline, I like Rocky Mountain doubles. Do you like doubles over single trailers?
I pulled B trains for I don't know how many years, and I quite like pulling the B trains, but I like tandem axle reefers as well. So that'd be a tough call for me. But if it's me paying for the fuel, I'll pick the reefer trailer because the B trains, the combination trailers are hard on fuel and greater expense to pull them. So if you're footing the bill like I always had to, I'd go for the tandem axle.
What happened to the roadway yellow truck lines?
They're still around. They've been bought out and amalgamated a couple of times. Now they're called YRC the last time I checked. But yeah, they're still around. You don't see them like you used to, but yeah, they're still around. What do you think about CR England having 3 bunks in trainer trucks? I don't know. They ought to have drug testing at CR England because they come up with some of the stupidest stuff. They were a really good company 30, 40 years ago. Staff. Oh, Jesus. And now they're just a pit hole. It's so sad to see how far the CR England has fallen because they were good back in the day, and now you just, man, I'd never work there now.
What's your opinion on hotshot trucking?
I'm not a fan. Hotshot is like just-in-time trucking as far as I know. And I'm not a fan of just-in-time trucking because basically you're throwing caution to the wind just to make this schedule. And I don't think that's safe, and I don't think that should be allowed in trucking. So, no, I'm not a fan of just-in-time or hotshot or anything like that. If you mean by hotshot, if you mean like little toy trucks, like pickup trucks pulling little trailers behind them, hey, if you can make money with it, why not? But if it involves just-in-time stuff, I'm not a fan of that.
T.J. Jones, the Bull of the Woods, are Canadian mega carriers just as crappy as the U.S. mega carriers?
It's a good question, but I have to say the American mega carriers have got the handle on being crappy.
I'd say so.
Would you? Yeah, there's,
Ours aren't great.
Ours aren't great, but yours are worse.
Yeah. They're bigger, really.
And they're a lot bigger than what we have up here.
Yeah.
A lot bigger.
CR England is a puppy mill for students. Get them and chew them up and spit them out.
Yeah, it's you never hear anything good about those guys anymore. It's too bad.
Well, here's a job we should all get. Been doing local runs, 150 air mile radius, getting 3,000 miles a week and netting 6,000 a week, hauling grain from co-ops to the railroad hubs in Kansas City.
Now there is a job that's still making money. Mm-hmm. Good for you. And jobs like that are still out there if you look. So this guy's got one. Great job. Hang on to it.
Bison has a good reputation down here. How about in Canada? Borderline.
Bison has a good reputation, but they're cheap. So that's the way we look at them up here.
Yeah, but how are they to work for? That's what he's asking.
I understand from the guys that work there, if money in retirement isn't your primary goal, they're pretty good to work for. But, a lot of guys like to retire sooner or later, so.
Okay, a few more. In your experience, is there a difference driving in Canada as compared to the U.S., and which is your preference?
Yeah, there's a huge difference between driving in the U.S. and Canada. I'll pick the U.S. every day of the week because there are far more facilities for truck drivers than the States.
More truck friendly.
They're far more truck friendly. Mm-hmm. And they're far more professional. The four-wheelers aren't as crazy down there as they are up in Canada. We don't even really have hardly any truck stops up here anymore. They're Petropass things, and they're dirty, and they're not very nice at all. They're nasty, a lot of them. So no, I truck in the States all day long. And that was what I did for many, many years. The majority of my trucking was in the States. And it paid better too.
You talked about expedited trucking?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's the same thing. It's just in time, rush. I don't think it should be allowed.
Pack our engines, headaches and junk.
Yeah, like I say, I hear that from guys, but every time I hear a complaint, it turns out to be a sending unit or a sensor problem, and I just have them blank that out.
Okay, 925,000 miles on my Cummins ISX. Head is gone, getting a new one. Bottom end is done like 6 months ago. Should I replace my piston and rings as well?
Absolutely, replace the pistons and rings. You bet. Absolutely. That's still pretty good for an ISX engine, though.
Mm-hmm.
You must have treated it well.
Someone had mentioned on here they had a dog that sensed when they were near the Iowa 80 truck stop, and the dog got excited when they were near the Iowa 80 truck stop. There was just another comment here about Iowa 80 truck stop.
Oh, that's cute.
It said they had a doggy wash or something at the truck stop, and the dog knew it.
I don't know, but I'd believe it. I never traveled with a dog, but they had everything under the sun at Iowa 80. It's a great truck stop, so I believe it. That's funny.
Question: how long after an accident should I wait before switching companies? I don't quite understand that.
You mean if you've had a wreck and then you want to shop your business around to work somewhere else? That's a good question. I've never been in that situation, but
Hector.
man.
Well, let's see if he replies here. I have a Volvo with a Volvo engine, 1.253 million miles on it, original engine.
Well, it certainly doesn't owe you anything. You've done well. It's obviously been a good truck for you. It's made you money, obviously, so you can't complain about that. And all truck manufacturers make a good truck sometimes and a bad truck sometimes. Everybody makes a lemon sometimes, but no, you've got nothing to complain about there.
Okay, a few more. Why are there more truck stops in the 401 GTA to Brockville?
Are there more? Are they real truck stops? I didn't run that area very much. I wasn't aware that there were more truck stops in that area. That could well be, but I couldn't tell you why or what I would consider to be a truck stop, a real truck stop down there. It's a very heavy corridor. There's a lot of truck traffic between Montreal and Toronto. There's no doubt about that. So that would explain maybe why there are more truck stops as opposed to west of Toronto.
Here's a reply from Hector. Working at a company about 2 years ago, I had an accident that was my fault. There were no injuries. Everyone keeps saying wait 3 years, but I honestly hate my company.
Well, then I'd shop it now, Hector, because it's not going to get any better where you are. So 3 years seems like plenty of time to me. I'd go looking now.
Florida Trout 101. Thank you for the support.
Thank you.
Michael Mueller, just subscribed. Been watching your videos for years. Thanks for all your wisdom.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Thank you for watching.
Okay, a few more.
Here's a good one. Why is there not more freight hauled by Canadian Rail, CN, and CP? Mm-hmm. Oh, believe me, they haul as much as they possibly can. That's part of the problem. The freight rate here in Canada is so poor because the rail's got all the freight. So that was a big reason I did most of my trucking in the States. You can't compete with the rail up here. They're too cheap. But believe me, the rail's grabbing as much freight as they possibly can.
Okay, can wrap it up if you have something to say, and then we'll close it down.
I have to say I enjoy these live chats. I feel like I'm back at the truck stop chatting with friends again, so I've enjoyed this. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you guys all stay safe and keep the rubber side down. Be careful, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.